gentlemen, please welcome Cue Ball Carmichael and Johnny Stewart.
Hello, everybody, for another Sunday night edition of TruthBusters Live. This crazy, hyperbolic conspiracy plane is flying higher and higher as we go. Success of this show is leaps and bounds. It's been awesome. It has been awesome. We are back on the air after a brief COVID and production and advertising sponsorship lull. And the plane is wheels up, feet dry, and we're going skybound. With me today, as always, our producer, Nick London, and our host, our co-host, and the pilot of this crazy plane, Mr. Cue Ball Carmichael. Q, I call today's episode Mother Goose Fairy Tales, Stories, and other bedtime sagas that we tell our children. I swear to God, I reading the description of one of the topics we are going to talk about today, I actually had to pause and say, this is like a fairy tale. Anyways. So, Q, how you doing? You look good, brother. What's going on?
Same old, man. Keeping on. Sales are up on Amazon. Life is good. About to add 5 more products, so it's all good. Hot as heck in North Carolina. 88 feels like 94, but that's the Carolinas.
Well, good, can I tell the people? Not interrupting you. Can I tell the people what you did to me last week? Okay, yes. Folks, we're doing a little. It's called Kayfabe and Coffee. And I'm sitting down with wrestlers that are friends of mine. We're just going to have coffee. I'm going to ask questions that, haven't been asked before. Cue Ball is our executive producer. Our first assignment, he sends me to frickin' Scottsdale in June to do Superstar Billy Graham and Billy Anderson. I felt like I was on Mars. So that's all I want to say. Thank you for that assignment. Woohoo! It was great. 112-degree weather. It was like being mugged nonstop. But thank you, executive producer Cue Ball Carmichael.
Well, you know what Phoenix is famous for, right?
No.
It's known as the Easy Bake Oven of the United States. It gets that hot.
Hey, Chris, Q, have you heard car salesmen? I'm being legit. Have you heard car salesman stories? We both did that as an occupation out in Phoenix, New Mexico, Vegas, where you can't wear, folks, I'm not lying. And Q, if you got any stories, share them. Where you can't wear cheap rubber-soled dress shoes or else they will melt on the lot of the new car or used car dealership. They will not like melt, but they will misshape it. Q, do you have any, stories of guys in, dress shirts in 112-degree weather?
Yeah, I've got a couple of guys that did work out there in the car business, and one guy went from Alaska selling cars to Phoenix.
Oh my God!
He couldn't get his shit together and get back to Alaska fast enough. Oh. He said, "At least when it's cold, you can put layers on. But what are you going to do when it's 118 degrees and you're standing out there with an old guy who's cold when it's 90?" And he's on the lot, and he can't decide which Cadillac he wants to trade his 2-year-old Cadillac in on. So it's an hour event on the pavement out there.
Right. I mean, obviously, like their summer is like a Midwest winter. You just don't go outside, right? I mean, yeah. Thank you again for that assignment. Oh, you're going to be
you're welcome.
Loving you as our executive producer.
Well, anyway. I'm sending you, listen. I already got January next year picked out. It's a place called Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan.
Oh, lovely. So I need a dog sled?
How'd you know? Who told you that? Did you tell him? Okay.
What's the song from Slapshot by Sonny, whatever his name is, Little Old Girl from Saskatoon? Where is Saskatoon? Do you know where Saskatoon is? I don't even know.
It's in Saskatchewan.
Oh, it is. That's what I thought. Okay.
Yes.
Fun. Woo. All right.
Canadian trivia by the Americans. Next one, crazy.
Right. Hey, what's Q? Before we start into the fairy tales and ghost stories. Markets are up. Doesn't seem to be too effective. They like what they see. You got any thought? Biden's is the presumptive nominee. You got any thoughts with where the election's gonna happen? I mean, I know a lot of Republicans are not real happy with Trump's, behavior, his verbiage, the way, your dad wouldn't act like that. My dad wouldn't act like, you got any thoughts on the race and, a couple of minutes we can spend on it?
Well, I don't really think if Biden's the Democratic nominee, I don't think there is really going to be a race. I think it's going to be a landslide. I just do. I think that one of the things that a lot of people respect Trump for is he doesn't care what he says.
True.
And that's most Americans want to say what they want to say. He's kind of like Stone Cold, and the rest of the politicians are Vince McMahon in the height of the Attitude Era. He doesn't play politics as usual, and it drives politicians nuts. But it makes Americans go, I wish I could just say what was on my mind 24/7 and get away with it and be the ruler of the free world. But so I don't think with Biden there's good of a race. I really don't.
You think they're going to play like videos of Biden with all of his verbal gaps and his stuttering? And I'm not being a cruel person, but I mean, you're running the free world. You're running the most powerful military in the history of the planet. I mean, the guy doesn't know if it's Tuesday or last Friday. I mean, literally. I mean, do you think so? I mean, does the Trump campaign need to run videos of commercials of Biden just gapping? And here's another thing. And I want your analysis. I love it. A guy that's been senator for 27 years, vice president for 8 years, telling you how screwed up the country is for the past 35 years. I mean, you've been in office. I swear to God, the world that I live in is. I'm like, you were vice president for 8 years. Why? I mean, So what do you think the Trump strategy is going to be?
I think they're just going to show 7,000 different videos of him smelling little girls' hair, and then it's over.
I forgot about that.
That's so creepy.
Oh my God.
That's so creepy.
Senator Grab-It-All, as my cousin Jimmy Mara calls him. Yeah, you're right. It's going to be interesting, and I don't know who's behind or what's goosing the riots and stuff. But if it is certain Democratic operatives, they are doing everything they can to bring this country, the economy. I mean,
Look,
I don't want to get into the COVID again, but I mean, do we need to destroy small businesses and I don't know. Now they're saying the COVID, and I'm not getting off on that topic. Now they're saying the COVID death rate might be 0.0013, like less than the flu. Just saying, maybe more contagious, but so more people are going to get it, but less than the flu. So I don't know. I mean, there was. Wait, can I say one last thing before before my brain damage? There was a restaurateur from Chicago, and somebody's interviewing me, and this guy is just ready to give the bank back the keys. And he goes, no, it's going to be great in Chicago. I have a 26,000 square foot restaurant, but right now I have 6 tables outside in front of my restaurant that I can serve food. I'm going to make millions. Just like, what are 6 tables going to do in my, 79 table restaurant and bar? Any thoughts? I mean, I don't expect we kicked the horse.
The good thing is the SBA has opened up the PPP, which is the payroll protection plan. A lot of people are going to be able to apply and recoup, and there's a lot of loans available right now. They're doing a good job of making that stuff available for people that suffered. And is it going to help everybody? No, because it's a complicated process to download the application, fill it out, sign it, and get it sent in. But I mean, it's there, it's available. People need to look into that. I think, it's pretty important. But I mean, the whole COVID thing. Look, we figured out one thing out of COVID: how to avoid catching the flu in a normal year. Wear a mask and keep 6 feet distance. And guess what? Because the flu's been a bigger killer than the COVID. I mean, in 2017-18, it killed 60,000 people. In 2014-15, it was 51,000. Those are right from the CDC. So guess what? Flu season, you get a shot, you wear a mask, you keep 6 feet, and the flu kills 1,000, 2,000 people, not 60,000. So we've learned something we can practice in the future if you really don't want to get the flu. So,
I mean, Nick London, we need the great answer bell again. You know, with Q, we need to have the sound effect when he has like awesome answers. That's so true. I mean, really, think about saving 40,000 lives next year.
I'm the master of the obvious.
No, well, that's a good point though about the flu. Mask, keeping distance. Jesus,
Yeah.
what if we could save 20, 30,000 people next year? That is a great perspective, positive, optimistic perspective to look at that. Absolutely, for sure. And even for the next epidemics, I think that the whole world has learned, you know, quick response, communication, you know, stop the travel, you know, it could really put another one in its track. So great point. All right. Yeah, no problem. Now to our Mother Goose fairy tales. I'm sorry. We're talking about aliens, our 6-part series on aliens. Last week, if you joined us, or if you didn't, you could go listen to the podcast. We covered Sumeria. We covered the site in Turkey. I'm still learning how to pronounce it. Göbekli Tepe. Just the oldest religious site in the world. You know, beating the Sphinx by about 6,000 years. You know, don't worry about it. And it was a really, really good. I was learning stuff. It was just a great show. Tonight's episode, we are going from Pumapunku to Luxor. Now, I spent all day telling myself, don't say Lexus, say.
This don't talk about the hotel in Vegas, the Luxor. It's different, even though it's shaped like a pyramid.
Right.
I think Pumapunka is probably going to take up the whole show, to be honest with you.
Well, we move on. No big deal. So,
yes, Nick.
You and I were talking about this the other day at our production meeting. You know, Egypt and sites like Pumapunku. This is really the showstopper that makes people go, wait a minute. I mean, come on. Pumapunku is a area inside of the Tiwanuca site in Bolivia. Folks, you got to Google this. I know Nick, our producer, is going to put some pictures up. Amongst all of the things I could tell you about, the most incredible part of this site it was 563 to 600 AD. It was constructed by who? We'll get to that. In Bolivia, is that in the midst of, again, we said this last week, disease, animals, infant mortality back then that was 75%. The weather, starvation, killing, go hunting, killing, harvesting, cooking your meals. We were a hunter-gatherer society, so we're planning, we're harvesting, we're reaping, we're storing. It is a daily fight for just basic survival, and I cannot stress that enough. And in this basic fight for survival, the Bolivians decided, I'm looking down here, let's take sandstone blocks, quarry them 6 miles away in a deep, steep incline quarry. Drag these, one of them, 131 tons. Drag it 6 miles to build a ceremonial platform in sight. I mean, right there, right there at the archaeological convention. John, you and I are folding up our papers, closing the briefcases. Bye. We're going into the bar for happy hour. Yeah, in the midst of this struggle, this culture quarried, mined, drug 6 miles, 1, 2, 3, up to 130-ton blocks of sandstone. But that's not enough. Some of these sandstones, many of them, first, the H blocks, we call them. So you have an H. Just, folks, picture an H in sandstone. But then above it is a smaller H, and then a smaller H, like it's 3D. Some are dug in to perfectly 90 degrees. There are perfectly power drill looking marks that are on a vertical plane that are completely that are not higher or lower than the next one. You cannot put a playing card in between these blocks. They developed a system of melting nickel, copper, and iron to make a kind of like it was called hold on here, a cramp in between the blocks. We found these cramps in Turkey, in South America, Central America, the Middle East. Who was teaching these construction techniques? And it absolutely blows my mind. I want to, Q. I want to, before I flip it to you. It is without argument that the Bolivians 1,400 years ago knew what's called descriptive geometry, which is the only, you have to know this to do these etchings with a chisel that are perfect. And there's 50 H blocks that are all perfect. So a guy with a chisel did 50 blocks, 3D perfectly as the next one and the next one. 6 miles away, they brought the stones. Give me a freaking, I mean, stop. This is insanity. This is insanity that a scholar, an intellectual, a professor, a person who is trained in geography, a person that is trained in archaeology, a person that is trained in astral geometry and archaeology, which is the positioning of rocks, could see and understand the schematics of building this site and say, yeah, 1,400 years ago, it wasn't aliens, it was them. When you ask the Bolivians, Q, before I flip it to you, do you know what the Bolivians tell you, which is passed down for 1,400 years? Remember, Jesus Christ, Christianity is 2,000 years, so don't laugh at them believing what 1,400 years ago they said the aliens. Oh, I'm not going to give it away. Q, I want you to tell everyone, what do the Bolivians not believe, say happened when this site was built? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
They say the gods that came from Lake Titicaca, the star people, built it in one night. They built the entire structure in one night. And I do have to correct you, it's not sandstone, it's andesite, which is the third hardest stone known to man. So they're
okay. Well, some of the rocks were sandstone. That's what I wrote. Okay,
the big ones are andesite. But either way, regardless, yeah, that's the Bolivians, their belief. And, once again, carbon dating only goes back so far. The layer dating for that site actually goes back between 15 and 100,000 years. They don't know. They can't figure out. But a lot of archaeologists believe that this site is up to 15,000 years old. And, not only does it have the head and the face carved beautifully of every person of every origin around the world, but it's also got 2 alien faces carved in there that look just like what we call the graves.
Can you say that statement again, Q? Can you say that whole face statement, the whole sentence again? Because I want to hear that again.
every nationality, every origin, including the Sumerians. All their faces are all carved into this rock, and the last two faces are what we think of as aliens with a round head, the big eyes, the grays. There's two of those carved into that also. So not only did they carve every walk of life, including Sumerians, who lived 6,000 years ago, but they also carved two alien faces into the rock. And their god that they worship, if you look at it, he is to a T a Sumerian god. He has the beard. He has the high head, the elongated skull. He's dressed exactly the same as the ones you see in Sumeria. And that's who they say is the god who came from the lake, but originally from the stars. And these giant gods built this entire city in one night. And then the people of Bolivia, in order to view this, what they considered a holy place, they built Tiwanaku, which is a couple miles away, so they could watch this site, this religious site. Right. Another thing that's interesting is you'll hear a lot of people say, well, they rolled these rocks on logs. The interesting thing about this is it's at 13,000 feet in the Andes Mountains. The tree line only goes to about 10,500. So there's no trees there. It's too high.
Hello,
trees
folks.
can't grow.
Hello.
So the whole tree theory is completely gone now. So I saw a professional mason, a stone mason, go there to that site and look at it. And he said there's no question that all of the angles were cut with a modern day stone saw. Nothing, no chisel. It's too perfect. The tolerances are a couple of thousand inches from end to end. And tell me how they're going to get. There's many stones that are 100 tons or more, as you mentioned. Yeah. How do you cut that out of the side of a mountain? Number one. Number two, carry it 6 miles and build the site that, as the people, as you said, the Bolivian people passed down, they say one thing: it was built in one night. And interestingly enough, all those faces that are carved are from people as far away. The Sumerians are over 6,000 miles in the ocean away from there. So there's no way they could, but they're carved in there. So somehow they've carved every face in existence, every structure of every face, no matter what the race is, and plus 2 aliens in their carvings. Too perfect, as we would see, as you think the typical alien head is into that. And as scientists have said, and anthropologists and archaeologists, this is the one riddle on Earth that they cannot solve. They will never solve this.
Right.
And the angles, the angles, the right angles are so sharp and so perfectly cut.
They're perfect.
They're smooth, but the edges will still cut your hand if you rub your hand across the edge of it.
Hey, come on.
I mean, figure. There's nobody's going to figure that one out. It's just not going to happen.
It goes back to one of the 3 questions that we I don't know what the word is, that we propose to people. By the end of this series, email us, phone us, text our producer the 3 questions. And one of the questions goes back to all the faces. How did, pick any culture, how did they get from point A to another continent 1,000 years ago, to show them, to teach them? I can't think of off the head right now, but there are sites, I believe in South America, Q, where the stone carvings, they look like Africans. How did you know what an African looked like 2,000 years ago?
How did you know what a Sumerian looked like to a T? And that's the person that they call their god. And the statue is 16 feet high and weighs 100 tons. I mean, the carvings, if people will go after the show, if they'll listen to the show, watch the show,
Please
do
go.
research, they'll come up with the same stuff we will. And based on this entire 6-part series, I think what's going to happen with people is they're going to have all this information and they can once again make an intelligent decision on it, because all this stuff could not have magically happened. You know, why do all of these ancient sites point directly towards the constellation Orion? Why did they all say that their gods came from Orion? Why did they say life as we know it on Earth came from Orion? It's a consistent theory amongst all these alien sites. They line up with a constellation that is the same in China as it is in Serbia, as it is in Stonehenge, as it is in Egypt, as it is in Turkey, as it is in South America and Bolivia. You know, it's not possible that that's an accident.
I mean, you and I are average to above average intelligence. And when you see pyramids being built all over on every continent, how do you not just say, I'm not moving forward in academia until I solve this riddle? When you go to Mesopotamia, Iraq, and see a statue and finally decipher that this was our God from the heavens, and you go to Pumapunku and Tiwanaku, and it's the same guy, and the same description is, this is our God. How do you, I mean, walk me down from the ledge. How do you, as a scholar, say, you know, don't worry about it? No, I mean, it's bizarro world.
Well, you know, you have to look at it from the standpoint of what's been taught for the last 75 or 80 years in colleges, universities around the country. They've taught that man has only walked upright for 10,000 years. They've taught that we didn't have the ability to build anything more than basic structures, barely find fresh water, and hunt and gather enough food just to survive. Yet you see these massive undertakings of architecture out in the middle of nowhere. Somebody had to build it. They're in deserts where there's no water, there's no food. You know, the same things apply to all of these sites as their alignment to the stars, the summer solstice, the winter solstice. You know, and as we talked last week, these places line up perfectly with summer and winter solstices. You think about it. If you get it wrong one year, you got a whole year to fix it and hope you got it right the next year. And if you didn't, you got to start over with these things. So, and I don't think people today understand that you got to consider the society back then with no mode of transportation anywhere except their feet walking, no massive sources of reserves of food to go and get. Everything was hunted, killed, or gathered. They barely were able to survive. As you said, a great point, infant mortality was 75%. Yet at one time in Tiwanaku, which overlooks Pumapunku, there was a population of 400,000 people in that city. So somehow they were able to have enough kids and live long enough to have another generation who had another generation who had 400,000 people with infant mortality, disease, no antibiotics, things like injuries when they tried to move these giant rocks, whatever. There was very little chance that you'd ever find a society, you know, of that many people. The Mayans were the same way. How did these societies manage to get 400,000 people in a city in the Andes Mountains that's 13,000 feet above sea level, when there's no known source of food except for a few animals? No trees grow, so there's no berry bushes, there's no nut trees, there's no anything. But 400,000 people lived there at one time. I mean, they have, if you look at it and you back off and look at it from the sky, you see streets and roads and structures and Tiwanaku, which is the site built to observe Pumapunku. You see an actual city that looks like a city block or two or three or four or five in Chicago or in New York or in Los Angeles. and you see the technology that it must have took to build these things. And they also take into consideration that they used advanced geometry to build these things. I mean, which didn't exist for another 1,500 years. So how do they have this technology and this ability? It can only come from one place. Only one. And that's the sky. And that's why, imagine you live back then. You have no access to any information. Suddenly a spaceship comes out of the sky and lands, and a humanoid person comes. What are you going to think? This came from the heavens. This must be God or a God or a deity, because he came from the sky. So that's why they worship these aliens, or these Sumerian people that were transported by aliens around, which I think happened because when you come from the sky, you look and you're assumed to be a god. And back then, they drew and carved what they saw. That was the record for their kids and their grandkids and their great grandkids and their generations. The only way to record any events in time was to carve, cut, or draw in a cave, a hieroglyph, a geoglyph, a monument, anything like that. So these things, amazingly enough, stand today, thousands of years later, and these are the record of what those people saw. And if you take that into consideration of what the people of Bolivia saw in these mountains, every one of those faces, including the two gray aliens, that has to be what they saw in person, face to face.
Well, why do you and I realize that, and academia and scholars, just shrug their shoulders?
It's a simple answer.
I know what I just don't. I know cognitive dissonance. That's one idea crashing against another in your brain. I understand that, but I mean, folks, if you go to Google and put in Puma Punku, you'll laugh, you'll giggle. You'll giggle at the fact that some professor said, "Oh no, Stone Age man made this 1,400 years ago." I mean, it's comical. It's like a stonemason with a laser cut machine would have a hard time making these 3D blocks. And there was one stone. Do you remember we were kids? The round peg went into the round hole, square peg went into the square hole. But the mechanism was a rectangular tower, and it had the cutouts of the holes. There's a stone pillar, a rectangle stone pillar, where somebody cut out different kinds of shapes 6-7 inches into the stone. How did you get 6? Come on. Hey, come on.
I can answer the academia question for you really quick. If the scholars of today in the past 50 years, 100 years, were to accept this theory that anybody with any common sense does, that means everything they learned and everything they were taught was BS. And that every book in every college and every high school and every program around the world now has to be rewritten. And history has to be changed. And nobody wants history to be changed, especially the people that are 20 years into a career teaching archaeology as a professor at the University of Chicago and making 6 figures, got tenure, he's doing great and loves his life, loves his job. If he accepts this, even though inside he knows it's true, if he outwardly accepts this, then a massive change has to be made, and everybody that taught everybody is now wrong. Every book is rewritten. History is changed completely. And we know that the academics don't want to look like idiots. Their biggest thing is pride. And that means everything this guy taught for 20 years was a lie. Everything his professor that taught for 40 years was a lie. Everything that the professor that taught him for 40 years was not true. So nobody wants to accept the fact that actual history now has to be taken into account and the books have to be rewritten. We have been walking upright for more than 10,000 years. We had help from extraterrestrials in building these massive structures that align perfectly with certain constellations. None of this stuff was an accident. None of this stuff was done by the man of that era. Everything was done with help from extraterrestrials. And, you know, the government's been covering up UFO encounters. You saw the picture of the UFO over O'Hare Airport that lingered there for 40 minutes. I mean, nobody wants to acknowledge that that fact happened, because now we have to accept that we are being visited, which I believe we have been for years, and it's been covered up by the federal government, because you and I both know they have the mushroom theory when it comes to us. Keep us in the dark and throw bees on top of us. So we will sprout in the dark and know nothing. That's their mentality.
Yes. So what you're saying is having academia finally relinquish and say, we don't know exactly what it was or who they were, but somebody with a extremely far beyond intelligence came to these people all over the world, taught them, showed them, and it's almost like, well, let's now rewrite Hinduism and Christianity and all those pages in the Bible. No, you know, is that what you're basically saying? That like you're like, well, having been a Christian for 50 years and all of a sudden realizing, you know, it's wrong.
Yeah, and here's the other challenge. The Catholic Church is the most powerful organization in the world. Take a look at the Vatican and the Vatican Library and all the information and stuff. And they know that this is true, but they won't let it out because it would cause complete and utter chaos in the Catholic religion. Because now they would say, "Oh my gosh, was God an alien? Was Jesus an alien? What if this happened? Who was he? Just another guy from the stars?"
Right.
I mean, so it changes everything. And the Catholic Church makes billions of dollars. The Vatican is not a $40 building. It's a $4 billion cathedral.
Largest landowner in the world.
That's right. The largest landowner in the world is the Catholic Church. You're exactly correct. And also one of the most powerful organizations. And you know that they lobby just as hard as a pharmaceutical company.
Yeah.
And they are lobbying to keep this information buried, to keep from the destruction of society. And the government's keeping it under wraps because they think that there'll be civil unrest after they tell us that they've already been in communication and made deals with aliens for the last 30 or 40 years. And they've lied to us about it. I mean, they feel the stuff that's happening now and all around the country through the George Floyd incident will look like a beach party compared to what people will do when they found out their government's lied to us for 40 years. I mean, you will have the first revolution in this country since the 1770s. You'll have a true revolution. People don't accept it.
As an elected politician once told me, do you really think the government of the United States is going to get up, look at the American people on TV and say, we've been lying to you for over 50 years. We know who they are. We have no control over them. We're really not sure what their intentions are. And we've been bullshitting you for 50 years, which is true. It's never going to, it's never going to happen that way, basically.
Yeah.
But I want to,
go ahead. By the way, John, the 16,000 people that disappeared in the Alaskan Triangle in the last 30 years, just, you know, Bigfoot didn't take them. The aliens did. That was part of our deal. Take them from somewhere where nobody's going to miss them and nobody cares. We'll take them out of Alaska then.
Right.
You know, I mean, I believe that it's been happening for years. Some they put back and monitor, and some they just keep. Because 16,000 people in one area of one state in the past 30 years, the least populated state in the country, by the way, by its size, the least populated, the least populous dense, they got 16,000 people that have never been found. They haven't found a shoe. They haven't found a leg. They haven't found body parts. They haven't found clothing. They found nothing.
You know, Liz Kronkin is a reporter. She's been on the Epstein and the worldwide pedophilia ring. And hopefully we can have her on our show. I have her on our show. She said one time, and then I Googled it, and I sat there for minutes, stunned, of the hundreds of thousands of missing people around the world every year. It is so overwhelming that I had cognitive dissonance where I'm like, this is impossible. This isn't this. You know what I mean? This is a scandal. I mean, how could the governments not be in panic? But I would that you when we do that Alaskan Triangle, I would like to even her or David Paulides, who does the missing 911. He's the former Detroit detective. I would like to have him on with us. Q, I wanted your reaction on what you were talking. And by the way, you've been knocking it out of the park the past. I mean, your whole thing with rewriting academia is so spot on. Makes so much sense to me, and I'm learning myself. But I remember being in a car with, if you can believe it or not, do you remember? Oh my God, I'm going to forget it. I want to say David Punk or Puck. David Puck from the first MTV Real World, where they lived in San Francisco. Ladies and gentlemen, it was the first time they put people in a house, the Real World. Yeah. It was in San Francisco. He was the crazy blonde-haired messenger boy, picked his nose, started fights. Him and I did a wrestling show and like one of the first Comic-Cons back in like 2004 or 5. And we were in the car, and he is a huge ancient astronaut theorist. He made a great point. He said, John, and I just thought of this I just remember this a couple of minutes ago. He said, Lucy, that upright hominid, upright little person they found 3.2 million years ago, that rewrote everything, that we had to realize that we were walking upright 3.2 million years ago. He said if that skeleton was found with a ray gun or a metal, high-tech utility belt around its waist, or things that they could, if it would, you would have never heard about Lucy. No. But the fact that it was humanoid and it all, and going back to your point, what Lucy fit into all of the, goose step teachings, lock, stock, and barrel of humans, that there's only been humans, and we have a rib cage, and blah blah blah. And when you were talking, I said that he was right. If they found anything that was out of the ordinary with that creature or any, skeleton, you'd never hear about it, because it's got to fit in their paradigm. It's got to fit. It's got to be the square peg into their square hole. And it just, I just want to know what you think about that.
Well, and that's the problem, is that every time something is found, the government comes in and the area gets blocked off, and the government goes and investigates it first in the name of the U.S. government. And whatever's there, we're never going to know the truth, ever. It's just like, look, there was a case. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this. I'll give you an example. It was thought that the Nazis actually had a time machine, and it was shaped like a bell.
Right.
And this bell disappeared, and a couple of top-notch Nazis disappeared too. They couldn't find them. They gave 3 different accounts of what happened to them and how they were killed. And 22 years later in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, a bell-shaped object crashes from the sky, lands in the dirt. One guy, one reporter, got one picture, and it was covered in dirt, but it's identical to the bell that the Third Reich had that we're using for a time machine. And my wife saw it, and she goes, yeah, but it was 22 years later. You think they were still alive? I said, it took them 2 minutes to get there, so I'm pretty sure they were, because it was a time machine, you know? And that's just one of the things that reporter got thrown out. The government came in, they blocked it off, they brought in a flatbed truck, they put a crane, got a crane in there, put it up on a flatbed truck, and they had it out. This happened at 11 o'clock at night, and they had it out by daylight. You know, this stuff happens. If we think for 1 minute that the only crash of a UFO was in Roswell in 1947, Americans have lost their mind. It happened before Roswell. It happened after. The government is an expert at getting people in there, not necessarily in uniform, not necessarily looking like the government, but they get them in there. They get a truck in there. That thing gets on a flatbed. It gets canvassed, and it's gone. And it's gone to Wright-Patterson, the most secure Air Force base, and one of the most secure bases in the entire world, where 35% of it is completely underground, and most people don't even know. Why would you need 35% of your military base after the Cold War underground and in private? There's only one reason why: you're keeping stuff there that you don't want Americans to find out about.
Right.
It's very simple.
Right.
And what happens to people that talk? What happens to people that worked on secret projects in Roswell, and people that took the underground train from Vegas at 600 miles an hour to S2, which is just southeast of Roswell, and worked there and took the train underground at 600 miles an hour back every single day, and came in and out of the same office building 350 miles away? Nobody knows about that. A few people have, and they've talked, and all those people, and it's just like the Clinton's mafia. How many people are they responsible for that are no longer here? If you find out something the government doesn't want you to find out, you better get to a foreign country, become an expatriate, change your name, and get plastic surgery, because they will find you, hunt you down, and eliminate you. You will not be the person that talks. Or they'll take a couple people from your family and keep them for a week, and if you promise to shut your mouth, they'll bring them back. It happens all the time, and people don't understand that. These 16,000 people from the Triangle, these hundreds of thousands of people that disappear off the face of the planet, I'll guarantee you one thing: a lot of them saw something they should not have seen, and that's why they have completely disappeared off the face of the planet. That, or the next time I see an alien, I'm going to ask him how people taste, because either they're getting eaten by something or they're being taken by something. And anything that eats something as big as a human leaves something behind, unless they eat it 3 light years away. So, you know, all this stuff spells U.S. government denial. Why doesn't the U.S. government admit the things about Göbekli Tepe, the things about Puma Punka? Why don't they admit this stuff exists? Because if they admit it, they have to take accountability. If they admit Roswell, they have to take accountability. If they admit we've had a deal with aliens for years, they have to take accountability. And the one thing that no politician wants to do is, guess what? Take accountability.
Right.
It's a government thing. It's a government cover-up. You know, all this stuff being ignored, academia not wanting to admit it. Look, it's all from a government perspective. They tell us nothing.
I agree. And, you know, it's something too, and I'm going to go back to what you said about the bell. I have learned that in researching conspiracies, and especially the alien conspiracy, it is focused on some of the little things of the big picture to see if it adds up, if 2 + 2 = 4, so on and so forth. And I find a very interesting thing about that bell-shaped craft that the Nazis, you know, claimed to have made. Do you know that astrophysicists have now determined that one of the best shapes for interstellar travel from star system to star system? Do you know what shape that is? A bell.
Bell.
I mean, so we have a society that claims to have built a spacecraft, a time machine craft, and it's in the shape of the bell. 40 years later, astrophysicists confirmed that the best shape for interstellar travel, one of the best shapes is, ladies and gentlemen, playing at home, a bell. So, to me, there it is, 2 and 2 equals 4, and we go hand in hand, strolling along the merry way. And that concrete structure, by the way, that they think where they first tested the bell is still up in somewhere in Germany, believe it or not. And there's hyper speed monorail trains all over the country, especially in New Mexico. Oh, you're full of crap. No, Cue Ball told me that there is. Go ask people in New Mexico. It's the biggest problem they have of living in New Mexico. Humming, rumbling, noise coming from underground that's driving people metaphorically insane. Can you imagine walking around and there's a hum, a repetitive hum, there's rumbling, there's noise from underneath your feet. You're not really in a known earthquake fault line, so it just, again, the big picture, underground, the United States, a secret monorail system. Oh, bullshit. Step back a little bit. Then, it's like a picture where you can close up on a certain, like a CIA analyst on a photo, and close up on a little piece of that picture, and you close up on the picture of, well, what are people saying in New Mexico? And they're, humming, rumbling, noises. So, if just one time, if one time one of these suppositions or stories didn't check out, but comment on this, they always check out. Who told you that they saw an alien in a crate? Well, you see that 82-year-old guy with the flannel shirt? Yeah, the nice farmer from Iowa. He was a councilman. He's got 4 beautiful children, great credit rating. Everyone loves him in the community. Yeah, that guy told me. Oh, is he full of shit? Does he fit the model of a con man who's going to lie to you? Oh, where was he in 1947? Oh, he was stationed at Alamogordo, New Mexico at the, 121st Bomb Air Wing. We light a nuclear bomb off, test a nuclear bomb in the Manhattan Project. 2 years later, basically within 200 miles is the first, our big, holy grail alien craft. Do you think that's a coincidence?
Sure.
What was 15 miles from the crash of the first holy grail alien crash site? A bomb wing that delivered the nuclear bomb or the atomic bomb to Hiroshima. And
right, that was
just tell me something that doesn't add up. And I've been studying this for 35 years. Nothing has ever did not add up, fall in line, lock, stock, and barrel. What say you?
Well, it's interesting that our nuclear missile silos, all throughout the Midwest, about 10 years ago, there was a craft that picked up on radar, and they first ignored it because the speed of the craft, it could have been real, it was a false blip, but in the path that it was in, it shut down 16 nuclear silos one by one. They went offline, which is the most dangerous thing when your nuclear missile silo goes offline, because you don't know if you got a hacker in there getting ready to launch a nuclear missile at Washington, D.C. You don't know. Okay. And all 16 of these went offline, and the commander for all of them said the only thing that happened that they can relate to it is they had this rapid blip on radar, but since it was traveling 3,500 miles an hour, they ignored it because they know nothing in this world goes that fast. But as it passed over these silos, each one of them, not together, each one would shut down. When it went on to the next one and turned one off, that other one would come back online. And it's happened in 16 different nuclear silos out in the, where they have them. I mean, out in the Dakotas and out in Idaho and places like that, out in the West, almost to the Pacific Northwest, but not quite.
And this is something that the wing commander, the guy in charge of all these, went on television and said, yes, this actually happened. We've all seen the Tic Tac video.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, come on, you got pilots of the best aircraft in the entire world, with the most strongest military in the history of the world, looking at it and saying, I don't know what it is, but I'd love to fly it. I mean, is there any more proof needed that aliens exist when the United States government and the best pilots in the world see it, film it, get it on radar, watch it, comment on it, and that video gets leaked? So all of a sudden, since it gets leaked, the Air Force had to put the video out, because otherwise, the government's key is they want you to believe their truth, not the truth. And what we focus on is the truth. And the truth is not popular, because America is, and don't take this bad, listeners, but America is filled with sheep. They're filled with people that get up, watch the fake news, believe everything the news tells them. When the government tells them something, they believe everything the government tells them, and they do that because it's safe. You get up, you do your 9 to 5 Monday through Friday. You barely get by doing that anymore. Both people in the house have to work. Things have changed. It's not a free country anymore. I don't know about you, but I paid a lot of money last year in income tax. I got very little back. So it's not free to live here.
You don't want to see my real estate tax bill, bro. Believe me.
No. I don't want to see your real estate tax, brother. No. So, it's not free to live here. It costs money to live here, and it's called taxes. Yeah. And that's just the way it is. But you would expect, considering they have 330 million people in America, or somewhere around that amount now, that we've been lied to enough over the years that people would smarten up. But it's easier to put your head down and take a step forward and not look up at the big picture.
Right.
Because the big picture is a massive lie. Why did the governor of Minnesota, a friend of ours, Jesse Ventura, why, after being the governor of the great state of Minnesota, did he move his entire family to Mexico? Why does his entire family live in Mexico today? Why does he not want to be part of the United States government's lie? He did the show Conspiracy Theory, and he said, he opened his eyes as the governor, realizing that no matter how much you want to help people, you can't get anything done because of bipartisanship, number one. And number two, he found out a lot of secrets that the American people have been lied to about that he wasn't comfortable with. So if he stays here, he has to tell the truth. So he just decided to move his entire family to the country of Mexico because he doesn't want to pay into the system that continually lies and takes advantage of its civilians, and it does constantly. So, that's kind of a big deal when a former governor and a guy that I think everybody, after he did his term as governor, and they watched, if they're conspiracy theorists, they watch his show Conspiracy Theory. I think people understand and respect Jesse Ventura. I think all of us here respect him. I think all of us here knows that one of the reasons why he got fired by Vince is because he made a comment that the wrestlers should have a union. They should have a retirement program. They should have health benefits. They shouldn't be 1099. They should be employees. And, he speaks out about unpopular topics, and he takes a lot of heat for it. So what's he do? Basically, he becomes an expat, and he moves to Mexico. That should tell people everything they need to know about how bad it really is. But they have to open their eyes. They have to open their eyes to the information we're giving them about these ancient sites that you would have trouble to make these sites today with modern tools in 2020. You'd have a difficult time. So they continue to feed us the mushroom theory. And John, I love the mushroom theory. I'm gonna turn it back to you. Do you think they're ever going to tell us the truth about aliens?
I do, and I think you are. It is. Thank you for that question, because that is a question that I have researched for 25 years. I think there has been a systematic numbing of the people as far as the alien topic goes. I think that in the late 60s, it was decided that we would have a 30, 40, 50-year program of disclosure. They researched how to do it, and we have been bombarded since the Steven Spielberg era of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. We have been bombarded with realistic portrayals of aliens. We have been bombarded with that gray alien image on bumper stickers, coffee cups, movies, TV, to the fact that if somebody sees it now, they just shrug their shoulders. It's like it's part of our society. I don't think there would be panic if done properly. The UN brought out an alien on stage and said, this is why we had to lie. We didn't know what they were going to do, and we still don't. And this is it. I believe that there has been a systematic approach to get us ready for disclosure. And the fact that the United States Navy, the Pentagon, and the U.S. government released a video of a FLIR forward-looking infrared camera on an F-15 Eagle, a Navy jet of a supersonic, physics-defying object, it should scream to you, we're trying to tell you. I think Bob Lazar was allowed to come forth in 1989 and 90. Absolutely. He was allowed to come forth, and that was just part of the disclosure. And I think in this program, Q, the biggest service we can do to the viewers and everyone that would see this in perpetuity 5-6 years from now is when someone, a critic or a cynic, tells you something against the alien topic or against something about aliens or ancient astronauts, ask them why. Okay, aliens didn't build this monument that weighs 131 tons. Why did man do this 1,000 years ago? Why are people disappearing? Why are people dying? Why are men who are 80 years old and good-hearted salts of the earth coming forward and telling you stories of their alien encounters at a crash retrieval site? Just ask the question. Why would somebody do that? For other than the fact that aliens, they saw what they saw, and it's all true. That's why. And it's important to ask that question. So anyway,
exactly.
Yes, you admitted it. We didn't get to Luxor, but we did. We will next show.
Yeah.
You knocked some points out of the park, buddy. And I know our viewers appreciate it.
John, 2 words for you, buddy. Brainstorm. Get some. I need a link.
You got it. You got it. All right. Thank you, Nick London, our best freaking internet producer, podcast producer in the internet. Will Jones, the intern, all of our unnamed researchers and production assistants. Thank you to Turnbuckle Radio. You guys have been awesome to this show, and we appreciate it. For Cue Ball Carmichael, I am Johnny Stewart. Nick London, our producer. You have been watching Truthbusters Live. We'll see you next Sunday, same time, same channel. Thank you, everybody.
Not their truth, the truth.